I never want to hear from you again." I slammed my phone onto the couch, like it was the source of every bad thing happening in my life right now. This morning, Coulter Ashford, my boss for the past 2 years, the man I'd worked myself to exhaustion for, fired me from his company. No warning, no explanation, just a cold, corporate email that read, "Your employment has been terminated effective immediately. HR will process your final settlement." 2 years. I'd given him 2 years of my life. Cancelled weekend plans, missed family dinners, turned down dates, ignored friends who said I was working too hard. All because I wanted him to see me, to recognize what I could do, to maybe, just maybe, notice me as more than another employee on his payroll. And this was what I got. A soulless termination email at 8 in the morning. But the universe wasn't done messing with me yet. Evening rolled around and I was sprawled on my couch, beer in hand, mindlessly swiping through a dating app. Because honestly, what else was I supposed to do with my suddenly free schedule? A message notification popped up. I didn't even look at the username before opening it. "I messed up badly. I need to see you. Just once. Let me explain everything." Annoying. I didn't bother checking the profile and just blocked the account immediately. 2 minutes later, another message from a different account. "Simon, please don't shut me out like this. Dinner. My place. I know I hurt you, but give me one chance to make this right." That's when I actually looked at the profile picture. My breath caught in my throat. Coulter Ashford. Was this man actually losing his mind? Fire me in the morning, then send desperate messages through dating apps by evening? I blocked that account too, then put my phone on silent and tossed it to the other end of the couch. Done. Finished. Over. I said it out loud like that would make it true. But apparently the universe had other plans. 10 minutes later, my doorbell rang. I checked the intercom screen and saw a delivery guy standing there holding a large white box. I opened the door, confused and slightly irritated. "What's this?" "Simon Reed?" he confirmed. "Yeah. This is for you." He handed me the box and walked away without another word. I opened it carefully. Inside was my favorite chocolate cake from that specific bakery across town. The one that had closed down 6 months ago. How did he even get this? And attached to the box was a handwritten note in familiar sharp handwriting. "I remember you loved this. I'm downstairs right now. I won't leave until you come down and talk to me." Absolutely not. I set the cake on my table and walked to the window. And there he was. Coulter Ashford, standing in front of his sleek black Mercedes, wearing a full formal suit like he'd just come from a board meeting. He held a coffee cup in one hand. His eyes were fixed directly on my window. When he saw me looking down, he gave a small nod. Casual, like this was completely normal behavior for a CEO who'd just fired someone. "This can't be real," I muttered to myself in disbelief. My phone vibrated. A text message. I had no idea how he'd gotten my number again after I'd blocked him. "I know you're watching me right now. Come down and talk. Or I'm spending the entire night out here in my car." And I absolutely knew that Coulter Ashford wasn't the type to make empty threats. When he decided something, he followed through. Rules and social norms be damned. But I wasn't going to give in that easily. This was about principle now. I pulled my curtains closed and switched off all my lights. If he wanted to wait, fine. I wasn't going down there. Not tonight. Maybe not ever. I went to bed angry, confused, and more than a little bit curious about what would drive someone like Coulter to do something this extreme. But I pushed those thoughts away and eventually fell into restless sleep. When I woke up around 3 in the morning to get water, I couldn't help myself. I peeked through the curtains. He was still there. Sitting in his car now, but definitely still there. The interior light was on and I could see him working on his laptop. "You're actually insane," I whispered to the empty room. But something in my chest twisted. Something that felt dangerously close to hope. I went back to bed, but sleep didn't come easy. My mind kept replaying the day. The termination email, the dating app messages, the cake, him standing outside my building. None of it made sense. Coulter was always so controlled, so measured in everything he did. This felt completely out of character. Unless it wasn't. Unless this was who he really was beneath that icy professional exterior. By morning I'd convinced myself he would be gone. That he'd given up and gone home. That this bizarre chapter was over. I was wrong about that too. I had an important job interview scheduled for 9 in the morning. After yesterday's disaster, I needed to get back on track fast. So I showered, put on my best interview suit, and headed downstairs with my resume folder and a determination to move forward with my life. The moment I stepped outside my building, I froze. Coulter was still there, but he looked nothing like the composed CEO I'd known for 2 years. His expensive suit was wrinkled beyond recognition. The fabric creased and rumpled like he'd slept in it, which he obviously had. His tie hung loose around his neck, the knot undone. His usually perfectly styled hair was a mess, falling across his forehead. Dark circles shadowed his eyes, which were red and bloodshot from obvious lack of sleep. Stubble covered his jaw, something I'd never seen on him before, and scattered across his car hood were at least 6 empty coffee cups. He'd actually stayed out here the entire night, through the cold October weather, in his car. "You're completely out of your mind," I said, staring at him from across the sidewalk. "For you? Absolutely." His voice came out rough and raw, probably from exhaustion and too much caffeine. I rolled my eyes and tried to walk past him. I had an interview to get to, but he moved to block my path, standing directly in front of me. "Simon, please. Just 10 minutes of your time. I'll explain everything. If you still think I'm wrong after hearing me out, I'll leave your life permanently. I promise." "You fired me," I finally let my anger out, my voice rising. A few pedestrians slowed down to watch us, but I didn't care anymore. No warning, no reason. "And now you're standing here acting like some romantic lead in a drama, like you did something noble?" "I fired you because I was losing control," he said bluntly, the confession hanging between us in the cold morning air. I stared at him, speechless. "What does that even mean?" "Last Friday, the marketing meeting. You were standing at the whiteboard explaining the quarterly projections. You had that marker in your hand and you were so animated, so passionate about your ideas. That exact moment, everything shifted for me." His voice dropped lower, more intense. "I realized if you stayed in my company one more day as my employee, I wouldn't be able to stop myself. I wanted to kiss you so badly that I had to physically leave the room." He ran a hand through his already messy hair. "I thought if I wasn't legally your boss anymore, maybe I could finally tell you what I've been feeling for over a year. That I'm completely drawn to you, Simon. In every possible way." My brain short-circuited. Was this actually happening? Or was I still asleep, having some kind of fever dream? "That's literally the dumbest plan I've ever heard in my entire life," I said with a nervous laugh that didn't sound convincing even to my own ears. "I know." He gave me a tired, self-deprecating smile. "But desperate situations call for desperate measures, and I've been desperate about you for a very long time." He held out his hand toward me. "One coffee. Just 1 cup. Please, Simon." Maybe it was seeing him so wrecked and vulnerable. Maybe it was the raw honesty in his confession. Maybe it was my own buried feelings finally surfacing. Whatever the reason, I found myself reaching out and taking his hand. "1 coffee," I said firmly. "That's it. Nothing more." His smile, exhausted, relieved, hopeful, did something strange to my heart. We ended up at a quiet cafe 2 blocks away. I texted my interviewer to reschedule, claiming a family emergency. Technically, this felt like an emergency of some sort. Coulter ordered for both of us without asking what I wanted. Black coffee for himself, caramel latte for me. The fact that he remembered my exact coffee order from company meetings months ago sent a small shiver through me. We sat in a corner booth. He wrapped both hands around his coffee cup but didn't drink any of it. Just watched me with those intense gray eyes that had always made me nervous during performance reviews. "So tell me," I said, breaking the silence. "How long have you been harboring these feelings?" 14 months, 2 weeks, and 3 days, he answered without hesitation. "Give or take a few hours." The specificity of it caught me off guard. "You count?" I remember the exact moment. He leaned back in his seat, his eyes distant like he was replaying a memory. "You were presenting that emergency strategy for the Hendricks account. Everyone else had given up on saving it. But you walked into that conference room with a 50-page proposal you'd put together over a single weekend. Your hands were shaking because you were nervous, but your voice was steady and confident." He looked directly at me now. "You saved that account, saved 15 jobs. And I sat there watching you and thought, this person is extraordinary. Then you smiled when the clients agreed to your terms and I knew I was in serious trouble. I didn't know what to say. I'd had no idea he'd noticed any of that, let alone remembered it in such detail. "Why didn't you ever say anything?" I asked quietly. "'Cause I was your superior. The power dynamic made it impossible. I didn't want you to feel pressured or uncomfortable. I didn't want you to think your job security depended on how you responded to my feelings." He finally took a sip of his coffee, grimacing slightly at how cold it had gotten. "So I kept my distance professionally while trying to figure out what to do about this situation. And your solution was to fire me and then harass me through dating apps?" I couldn't help the slight smile that tugged at my lips. "In retrospect, not my finest strategic decision," he admitted. "But I was running out of options and patience with myself." We talked for another hour. He explained how he'd been trying to find the right way to handle his feelings without compromising either of our professional positions. How he'd consulted with his lawyer about the ethical implications. How he'd ultimately decided that removing the employment relationship was the only way to move forward honestly. It was insane. Completely utterly insane. But somehow it also made a twisted kind of sense. The cafe was getting busier as morning turned into late morning. Coulter had finally started actually drinking his third coffee. He'd ordered 2 more while we talked. And I was on my second latte. The conversation had shifted from his confession to lighter topics. Favorite books, terrible movies we secretly enjoyed, places we wanted to travel. It felt natural. Easy. Like we'd been doing this for years instead of sitting together outside of work for the first time. "I always thought you were intimidating," I admitted, stirring the foam in my cup. "In the office you had this aura that made everyone walk on eggshells." "That's intentional," he said. "Leadership requires a certain distance. But I never wanted you to feel that way around me." He paused. "Did I scare you?" "Sometimes," I said honestly. "Mostly you just made me want to prove myself. Every project, every presentation, I pushed harder because I wanted to impress you." Something flickered in his expression. Pride, maybe. Or satisfaction. You succeeded. Every single time. The moment felt suspended. Like we were in our own bubble separate from the busy cafe around us. His foot brushed against mine under the table. Whether it was accidental or deliberate, neither of us moved away. That's when I heard the voice that could ruin any good moment. "Simon?" Every muscle in my body tensed. I knew that voice. I'd spent months trying to forget it. I turned around slowly, already dreading what I'd see. Derek. My ex. The man who'd spent almost a year emotionally manipulating me, making me question my own reality, convincing me that his lying and cheating were somehow my fault for being too sensitive and too demanding. "Oh, you've got to be kidding me," I muttered under my breath. Derek approached our table with that same fake charming smile he used to wear when he wanted something. "Simon, what a surprise running into you here. It's been what, 8 months? 9, I corrected coldly. 9 months since I finally got smart and left." His smile faltered for just a second before he plastered it back on. Then his eyes shifted to Coulter, and I could see the judgment forming. "And who's this? You're new?" "None of your business whatsoever." I cut him off sharply, but Coulter was already standing up. He was considerably taller than Derek, broader in the shoulders, and the exhaustion from his sleepless night somehow made him look more dangerous rather than weak. His entire posture radiated controlled authority. "Coulter Ashford," he introduced himself with a tone so cold it could freeze water. "And you are?" "I'm Simon's ex." I finished the sentence before Derek could spin it into something else. "My toxic, manipulative ex who I haven't spoken to in 9 months and would like to keep it that way." Derek's fake pleasant expression cracked. "Come on, Simon. Are you still holding grudges?" I apologized for that whole misunderstanding with Melissa. "That wasn't a misunderstanding," I interrupted, my voice hard. "You cheated on me with her for 3 months while telling me I was paranoid for questioning why you were always working late. You gaslit me into thinking I was crazy for having basic relationship expectations. Simon, that's not fair. You need to leave. Right now." Coulter's voice was quiet but carried an unmistakable threat. "Before this situation becomes a much bigger problem for you." Derek looked between us, clearly trying to decide if he wanted to push this confrontation further. He must have seen something in Coulter's expression that changed his mind, because he backed off with a bitter laugh. "Whatever. Enjoy your coffee date with Mr. Corporate here." He shot me one last look, something between anger and fake concern, before finally walking away. Once he was completely out of the cafe, Coulter sat back down. But I could see the tension in his jaw, the way his hands were clenched on the table. He hurt you badly. It wasn't a question. His voice was carefully controlled, but I could hear the anger underneath. For a long time, yeah, I admitted. He was good at making me doubt myself. Made me think I was overreacting to things that were actually legitimate problems. By the time I finally left, I barely recognized myself anymore. Coulter reached across the table and took my hand. The gesture was gentle but firm, grounding. I need you to understand something, Simon. What you just described, that's not love. That's not even close to what you deserve. And what do I deserve? I asked. Partly challenging, partly curious. Respect. Trust. Someone who builds you up instead of tearing you down. Someone who's proud to be with you, not someone who makes you question your worth. His thumb traced small circles on the back of my hand. You deserve someone who sees how incredible you are and feels grateful every day that you chose them. The sincerity in his voice, in his expression, made my throat tight with emotion. Is that what you're offering? I asked quietly. I'm offering everything I have, he said simply. My time, my attention, my complete honesty. I'm offering a relationship where we're equals, where your voice matters as much as mine, where your happiness is as important as any business deal I'll ever make. I looked down at our joined hands. His were larger than mine, calloused in places from whatever hobbies he had outside of work that I'd never known about. This whole situation was absurd. 24 hours ago he was my boss. Now he was sitting across from me in a cafe, holding my hand, offering me things I'd stopped believing I could have. This is crazy, I said. You know that, right? This whole thing is absolutely insane. Completely, he agreed. But the best things usually are. I met his eyes. Those gray eyes that had intimidated me in boardrooms now looked at me with something that made my heart race for entirely different reasons. I'm scared, I admitted. I'm scared of getting hurt again. I'm scared this won't work out. I'm scared of a lot of things. That's fair, he said. I'm scared too. I'm scared of messing this up. I'm scared of disappointing you. But I'm more scared of not trying at all and spending the rest of my life wondering what could have been. The cafe noise faded into background buzz. All I could focus on was him. This moment. This impossible choice. One chance, I finally said. You get one chance, Coulter. Don't waste it. His smile was brilliant and genuine, transforming his entire face. I won't. I promise you that. And despite all my fears and doubts, I believed him. We'd been sitting in that cafe for almost 3 hours. The lunch crowd had come and gone, and now only a few scattered customers remained. Coulter had ordered us sandwiches at some point, though I couldn't remember eating mine. My mind was still processing everything. His confession, the confrontation with Derek, the way he'd held my hand like it was the most natural thing in the world. I have something else to discuss with you, Coulter said, his tone shifting slightly, more businesslike, but not cold, professional but still warm. I felt my stomach tighten. If this is about rehiring me in some junior position to make yourself feel better, stop right there, he interrupted gently, that rare genuine smile appearing again. What I'm about to propose is nothing like that. Actually, it's the opposite of that. He pulled out his phone and typed something quickly, then set it face down on the table. I want you back in the company, Simon. But not as an employee, as my equal, co-founder, full partnership with equal ownership. I literally choked on the sip of water I'd just taken. I'm sorry, what did you just say? You heard me correctly. He leaned forward, his expression intense and serious. Your skills are wasted in a subordinate position. You're not meant to take orders, you're meant to give them. You're a natural leader with innovative ideas and the strategic mind to execute them flawlessly. Coulter, that's insane. You can't just. I can, and I am. He spoke with absolute certainty. Think about it rationally. That presentation you created for the Hendricks account, that saved us from losing a multi-million-dollar client. The restructuring plan you drafted for the marketing department, our efficiency increased by 40%. The crisis management strategy when our competitor tried to poach our entire sales team. You neutralized that threat before I even fully understood what was happening. I stared at him, speechless. I'd done all those things, yes, but I never thought he'd notice the extent of my contributions. I always assumed my work just blended into the background of the company's overall operations. You see yourself as just another employee, Coulter continued, but I see someone who's been essentially running half the company from behind the scenes. Someone whose insights have shaped our direction more than most of our mere executives combined. This is because of us, isn't it? I asked carefully. Because of whatever this is between us? No. His answer was firm and immediate. This is separate from our personal situation. Completely separate. If you told me right now that you never wanted to see me again outside of business, I'd still be offering you this partnership. Because professionally, you've earned it 10 times over. He reached into his jacket's inner pocket and pulled out a thick sealed envelope. This is a legal partnership agreement. I had my lawyer draw it up 3 months ago. 3 months? I repeated, stunned. But you only fired me yesterday. I've been planning this for a while, he admitted. I knew I couldn't keep working directly over you, because my feelings were becoming impossible to ignore. I needed to either remove you from my authority completely, or find a way to make us equals. Partnership solved both problems. He slid the envelope across the table toward me. It's all there. Equal ownership split. 50-50. Shared decision-making authority. Fair profit distribution. Legal protections for both parties. Complete transparency in all financial matters. My lawyer is one of the best in the city, and he made sure this contract protects your interests as much as mine. My hands trembled slightly as I picked up the envelope. And if I say no to the personal aspect? If I take the partnership but reject you romantically, then we're business partners and nothing more, he said simply. I won't pressure you, Simon. I won't make things uncomfortable. We'll maintain a professional relationship, and I'll respect whatever boundaries you set. I opened the envelope and started reading through the documents. They were dense with legal terminology, but as I worked through them, I realized everything he'd said was true. This wasn't some manipulative ploy or a way to keep me close. This was a legitimate business offer with terms that were incredibly favorable to me. This gives me veto power over major decisions, I said, looking up from the papers. As it should. We're equal, and this clause here, it allows me to buy you out completely if the partnership becomes untenable. I wanted you to have an exit strategy if needed. Your security matters to me. I kept reading, finding clause after clause that protected my interests. Stock options, profit sharing, decision-making authority over specific departments. It was more than generous, it was almost unbelievable. Why? I finally asked, setting the papers down. Why are you doing this? And don't just say it's because I'm talented. There are lots of talented people you could partner with. Coulter was quiet for a moment, seeming to gather his thoughts. Do you remember the Thompson merger negotiations last year? I nodded. That had been a brutal 3-month process where we'd tried to acquire a smaller competitor. You weren't supposed to be in those meetings, he continued. You were just there to take notes and prepare reports. But during the second week, when Thompson's CEO was trying to back out of the deal, you spoke up. You weren't supposed to, but you did anyway. I remembered that moment vividly. I'd been terrified, but I'd seen an angle everyone else was missing. You identified the exact pressure point we needed to apply, Coulter said. You saw that Thompson's CFO was actually on our side and suggested we direct our pitch through him instead of the CEO. That insight saved the merger, and I realized then that you thought differently than everyone else in that room. You saw patterns and possibilities that I'd missed. He reached across the table, not quite touching my hand but close. That's when I started paying attention to everything you did. And the more I watched, the more I realized you were operating on a completely different way than your position suggested. You weren't just executing tasks, you were thinking strategically, anticipating problems, creating solutions before issues even arose. I just did my job, I said quietly. No, you did far more than that. And it's time you were recognized and compensated appropriately for it. He tapped the envelope. This is that recognition. Partnership, equality, the ability to build something incredible together without the constraints of a hierarchical structure. I looked down at the contract again. This would change everything. My entire career trajectory, my financial situation, my professional identity. It was enormous and terrifying and exciting all at once. What if I'm not ready for this level of responsibility? I asked, voicing my deepest fear. Then we'll figure it out together, Coulter said. That's what partners do. You won't be alone in this, Simon. Every decision, every challenge, every success, we'll handle it together. The cafe was nearly empty now. Late afternoon sunlight streamed through the windows, making dust motes dance in the air. Outside, the city continued its busy rhythm, but in here time felt suspended. I need time to think about this, I said finally. Take all the time you need. The offer doesn't expire. He paused. But I hope you'll seriously consider it, not for my sake but for yours. You deserve this opportunity, Simon. You've earned it through your work, your dedication, and your exceptional abilities. I carefully placed the contract back in the envelope. And the other part, the personal part, that's separate, he said softly. You already gave me one chance there. I'm not going to waste it by conflating our personal relationship with business. These are two different things, and I want you to feel free to make decisions about each independently. Something in his words and his willingness to separate these aspects made me trust him more. This wasn't a man trying to manipulate or control. This was someone genuinely trying to do right by me in every way possible. Okay, I said slowly. Give me a week to review this properly. Maybe consult with a lawyer of my own. Then we'll talk. That's fair and smart, Coulter agreed. In fact, I insist you have independent legal counsel review it. I want you to feel completely secure in whatever decision you make. He signaled for the check, and when it arrived, he paid before I could even reach for my wallet. As we stood to leave, the weight of the envelope in my hands felt like the weight of my entire future. Outside the cafe, Coulter's driver was waiting with the Mercedes. Coulter turned to me, his expression softer than I'd ever seen it. Thank you for giving me this time today, he said. For listening, for considering the offer, and for not giving up on the possibility of us. Thank you for being honest, I replied. About everything. He smiled, and it transformed his whole face. Can I drive you home? I thought about it for a moment, then shook my head. I think I need to walk. Clear my head. I understand. He hesitated, then added, call me when you've made your decision. About the partnership, I mean. The other part, we can figure out as we go. I will, I promised. As I walked away, the envelope tucked securely under my arm. I couldn't help but smile. 24 hours ago, my life had fallen apart. Now I was holding an opportunity that could change everything, and maybe, just maybe, I was also at the beginning of something real with someone who actually saw me, all of me. The world felt full of possibilities again. 3 weeks later, I walked into Ashford Enterprises as a partner, not an employee, not a subordinate, an equal. My new office was directly across from Coulter's, separated by a glass-walled corridor that allowed us to see into each other's spaces. It was spacious, modern, and mine. My name was already on the door. Simon Reed, co-founder and partner. Seeing those words still sent a thrill through me. The first week had been a whirlwind of meetings, introductions, and establishing my new role. I'd brought in my own team, people I'd worked with before, who I knew were talented but overlooked. Coulter had given me complete autonomy over my departments, and together we'd started restructuring the company's operational framework. But not everything was smooth. The whispers started almost immediately. I'd catch fragments of conversations that would stop abruptly when I approached. Meaningful glances exchanged in conference rooms. The barely concealed skepticism from some of the senior staff who'd been with the company for years. Did you hear how quickly he rose through the ranks? There must be something else going on there. Convenient timing, don't you think? Right after Ashford's divorce was finalized? I hadn't known Coulter was divorced. That was something we still hadn't fully discussed in our careful navigation of the personal aspects of our relationship. We'd had 3 more dinner dates. Actual dates where we talked about our lives outside of work, our hopes, our fears, but we were taking things slowly, letting trust build naturally. The professional gossip, though, was harder to ignore. I tried to let it roll off me, focusing on my work and proving myself through results. But there were moments when the whispers got under my skin, making me question whether people would ever see me as legitimate or just as Coulter's favoritism personified. The breaking point came during the quarterly board meeting. It was my first one as a partner, and I'd prepared extensively. I was presenting a new strategic initiative that would diversify our revenue streams and reduce our dependence on our two largest clients. The proposal was solid, backed by months of research and financial modeling. Most of the board members were engaged in asking thoughtful questions. But Harrison, one of the longest-serving board members, sat with his arms crossed, his expression growing more sour as I progressed through my presentation. When I finished and opened the floor for discussion, Harrison spoke up immediately. "This is certainly ambitious," he said, his tone dripping with condescension. "Though I have to wonder about the wisdom of making such dramatic strategic shifts based on recommendations from someone who's been a partner for less than a month." The room went quiet. I felt my face flush but kept my composure. "The timeline of my partnership doesn't invalidate the research behind this proposal," I said evenly. "These recommendations are based on 18 months of market analysis and—" Yes, Harrison interrupted with a dismissive wave. "I'm sure you've worked very hard. It's just fascinating how quickly career trajectories can change these days. Traditional merit-based advancement seems almost quaint now." The implication was crystal clear. The room's atmosphere shifted, becoming tense and uncomfortable. Some board members looked down at their papers. Others glanced between Harrison, me, and Coulter with obvious discomfort. I opened my mouth to respond, but Coulter's voice cut through the room first. "Mr. Harrison." His tone was ice cold. "Would you care to elaborate on exactly what you're implying?" Harrison had the grace to look slightly uncomfortable. But he pushed forward. "I'm simply making an observation about modern corporate culture. No specific implications intended." "I think your implications were quite specific," Coulter said, standing up slowly. His whole demeanor radiated controlled fury. "So let me be equally specific in my response." He walked to the front of the room, commanding everyone's attention. I'd seen Coulter in leadership mode many times, but never quite like this. He was protective and fierce in a way that made my heart race. "Simon Reed is a partner in this company because he's earned it," Coulter said, his voice clear and firm. "His strategic thinking has prevented multiple potential disasters. His innovative approaches have increased our operational efficiency by 38%. His client relationship management has improved our retention rates significantly. These are measurable, documented contributions that have substantially impacted our bottom line." He paused, making deliberate eye contact with each board member. "But since we're apparently abandoning professional courtesy today, let me address the elephant in the room that Harrison is dancing around." My stomach dropped. Was he really going to? "Simon and I are in a relationship," Coulter announced. "A personal romantic relationship that began after he was no longer my employee, specifically to avoid any ethical complications." The room erupted in a mixture of gasps and shocked silence. I felt frozen in my chair, unable to process that he'd just publicly announced our relationship in a board meeting without any warning. "This relationship," Coulter continued, "has absolutely nothing to do with his partnership in this company. That decision was made based solely on his professional merits, and the contract was drafted by independent legal counsel to ensure fairness and transparency." Harrison's face had turned an interesting shade of red. "Mr. Ashford, I hardly think this is appropriate." "What's inappropriate?" Coulter cut him off sharply. "Is your insinuation that Simon's position is based on anything other than his capabilities? What's inappropriate is your attempt to undermine a colleague based on personal assumptions rather than professional assessment." He turned to address the entire room. "If anyone else has concerns about Simon's qualifications or the nature of our partnership arrangement, I invite you to schedule time with me privately. What I will not tolerate is passive-aggressive commentary or attempts to create a hostile work environment for any member of this team." The meeting ended shortly after, with board members filing out in uncomfortable silence. When the room finally cleared, leaving just Coulter and me, I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. "You just publicly announced our relationship," I said, my voice somewhere between shocked and impressed. "In a board meeting. To the entire leadership team." "I did," Coulter confirmed, loosening his tie slightly. "Was that wrong?" "You didn't ask me first," I pointed out, though I wasn't actually angry. "Just surprised." He walked over to me, his expression softening from the steel it had been moments before. "You're right. I should have discussed it with you beforehand. I apologize for that. But when Harrison started making those implications, I couldn't let them stand unchallenged. You went full protective mode, I said, unable to suppress a small smile. I won't apologize for that part, he said firmly. You're my partner professionally and personally. I won't let people disrespect you or question your legitimacy based on our relationship. You've earned your place here, Simon. Multiple times over. I stood up, closing some of the distance between us. That was either the most romantic or most reckless thing you've ever done. I'm still deciding which. Can it be both? He asked with a slight smile. Definitely both, I confirmed. Though now everyone knows. The whole company will know by tomorrow. Good, Coulter said simply. I don't want to hide what we have. I don't want you to feel like you need to pretend or be careful. Life's too short for that kind of stress. He reached out and straightened my collar, the gesture intimate and casual at once. Besides, now that it's public, maybe the gossip will die down. No more speculation needed when the truth is out there, or the gossip could get worse. I pointed out, then we'll handle it together, he said. That's what partners do, remember? I remembered those same words from the cafe 3 weeks ago. Partners. Equals. Together. Thank you, I said quietly, for defending me like that. For not letting Harrison's comments slide. Always. Coulter promised. I've got your back, Simon. Professionally and personally. That's not going to change. As we gathered our materials to leave the boardroom, I felt something shift. This wasn't just about romance or business anymore. This was about building something real together, a partnership that encompassed both aspects of our lives, without sacrificing either one. The road ahead wouldn't be easy. There would be more gossip, more skepticism, more challenges to overcome. But with Coulter standing beside me, not above me, not below me, but beside me, I felt ready to face whatever came next. We walked out of that boardroom together, side by side, and I felt more certain than ever that I'd made the right choice. All of them. 4 months flew by faster than I could have imagined. The initial awkwardness after Coulter's public announcement faded as my work spoke for itself. The gossip never fully disappeared. Office politics never do, but it became background noise rather than a constant pressure. More importantly, the company was thriving. The strategic initiative I'd proposed in that contentious board meeting had been implemented successfully, diversifying our revenue and opening up new market opportunities. Coulter and I had developed a working rhythm that felt natural and efficient. We challenged each other's ideas, balanced each other's weaknesses, and amplified each other's strengths. Our personal relationship had progressed too, though carefully. Dinner dates became regular occurrences. Weekend brunches. Late-night conversations that stretched until dawn. We'd kissed several times now, but we were taking our time with everything else. Building foundation before structure, as Coulter liked to say. Then came the campaign. We'd been working on it together for 3 months. A complete rebranding initiative for one of our oldest clients who was struggling to connect with younger demographics. It was ambitious, risky, and exactly the kind of challenge that excited both of us. Launch day arrived with a mixture of nervous anticipation and confident excitement. We'd poured everything into this campaign: late nights, weekend work sessions, countless revisions and refinements. If it succeeded, it would establish our partnership as truly formidable. If it failed, it would fuel every skeptic who thought I didn't belong in my position. The presentation was scheduled for 2 p.m. By noon, I was pacing my office, mentally rehearsing key points for the 100th time. A knock on my door interrupted my thoughts. Coulter walked in, carrying 2 coffees and wearing an expression of calm confidence that I envied. "Stop overthinking," he said, handing me one of the cups. "The work is done. The campaign is brilliant. Now we just need to show them what we've built." "What if they hate it?" I asked, voicing my deepest fear. "Then we'll figure out why and adjust," he said pragmatically. "But they're not going to hate it, Simon. Trust the work. Trust yourself." The presentation room was packed. Client executives, their marketing team, several board members from our company, and key stakeholders all gathered to see what we'd created. The pressure was immense. Coulter and I had decided to present together, trading off sections in a way that showcased our collaborative approach. As we walked through the campaign elements, the visual rebranding, the social media strategy, the experiential marketing components, the influencer partnerships, I felt the room's energy shift from skeptical to engaged to genuinely excited. When we finished, there was a brief moment of silence that felt like an eternity. Then the client's CEO started clapping and the entire room erupted in applause. "This is exactly what we needed," the CEO said, standing up. "This is fresh, innovative, and actually speaks to the audience we've been trying to reach. When can we start implementation?" The rest of the meeting was a blur of enthusiastic discussion, timeline planning, and budget approvals. By the time everyone filed out, my hands were shaking from adrenaline and relief. Coulter and I were the last ones in the presentation room. The moment the door closed behind the final person, I let out a sound that was half laugh, half cry of relief. "We did it," I said, turning to face him. "We actually did it." "You doubted we would?" he asked. But he was smiling. "Maybe a little," I admitted. "Okay, a lot." "I was terrified." "I know," he said softly. "But you didn't let that fear stop you. You pushed through it and delivered something incredible." The adrenaline was still coursing through me, making everything feel heightened and intense. Without fully thinking it through, I closed the distance between us and kissed him. It wasn't our first kiss, but it was different from the others. Those had been careful, exploratory. This was celebration and relief and joy all mixed together. Coulter responded immediately, his arms coming around me and pulling me closer. When we finally broke apart, both breathing heavily, he rested his forehead against mine. "Come to my place tonight," he said quietly. "Let me cook you dinner. Let's celebrate properly." "Okay," I agreed without hesitation. That evening, I arrived at Coulter's penthouse at 7. I'd been here a few times before for our dates, but something about tonight felt different. More significant somehow. He'd actually cooked, not ordered in. The table was set with candles and wine, and something that smelled amazing was keeping warm in the oven. "You went all out," I said, impressed. "Special occasion," he replied, pulling out a chair for me. "It's not every day we land a campaign that's probably going to win industry awards." Dinner was perfect. Not just the food, though, that was excellent, but the conversation, the atmosphere, the way everything felt easy and right between us. We talked about the campaign, about upcoming projects, about everything and nothing. After we'd finished eating and moved to the living room with wine glasses in hand, Coulter grew quieter. There was something on his mind. I could tell by the way he kept glancing at me, then looking away. "What is it?" I finally asked. He set down his wine glass and turned to face me fully. "I have a question to ask you, and I need you to know there's no pressure attached to it. You can say no and nothing changes between us professionally or personally." My heart started beating faster. "Okay, move in with me," he said simply. "Not because we're business partners, not because it's convenient, but because I want to wake up next to you every morning. Because I want to share breakfast with you and hear about your day and fall asleep knowing you're there beside me." I stared at him, processing this request. It was huge. Living together was a massive step, especially given how carefully we'd been moving until now. "That's a big ask," I said carefully. "I know it is," he acknowledged. "And maybe it's too soon. Maybe I'm pushing too fast. But these past 4 months with you, working together, building something together, getting to know you in the office, have been the best months of my life. I don't want to waste time pretending to move slower than I feel." He reached for my hand. "I'm not asking you to decide right now. Think about it. Take your time. But I wanted you to know where I stand. What I want." I looked at our joined hands, then up at his face. There was vulnerability there beneath the confidence. This wasn't the CEO making a business proposal. This was Coulter, the man who'd waited outside my building all night, who'd defended me in a board meeting, who'd slowly but surely become one of the most important people in my life. "I don't need time," I heard myself say. "The answer is yes." His eyes widened slightly. "Yeah, yes," I confirmed, feeling more certain with each passing second. "I want to wake up next to you too. I want all of that, the breakfasts, the conversations, the everyday moments. I want to build a life together, not just a business." The smile that spread across Coulter's face was pure joy. "Really? Really?" I laughed, "though I have some conditions about closet space and bathroom counter territory." "We'll negotiate terms," he said, pulling me closer. "I'm very good at negotiations." "I've noticed," I said, and then he was kissing me again. This kiss was different from the one in the presentation room. Slower, deeper, full of promise. When we eventually pulled apart, Coulter cupped my face in his hands. "I love you, Simon," he said softly. "I know we haven't said it before and maybe it's too soon for that too, but I need you to know. I love you." My throat tightened with emotion. "I love you too," I whispered. "I think I have for a while now. I was just too scared to admit it." "Not too scared anymore?" he asked gently. "Not anymore," I confirmed. "Not with you." We stayed up late into the night, making plans and talking about the future. Where my furniture would go, which rooms would be whose, how we'd merge our lives together. Practical details mixed with dreams and hopes. At some point I must have dozed off on his couch, because I woke to early morning light and Coulter's arms around me, a blanket draped over us both. He was awake, watching me with an expression so tender it made my chest ache. "Good morning," he said softly. "Morning," I replied, stretching slightly. "Did you sleep at all?" "A few hours," he admitted. "I kept waking up and having to check that this was real. That you were really here." I shifted to face him more fully. "I'm really here. And I'm not going anywhere." "Promise?" he asked. "Promise," I said firmly. "You're stuck with me now, both at work and at home." "Best arrangement I've ever made," he said and kissed my forehead. As the sun rose over the city, illuminating the penthouse in golden light, I felt a sense of rightness settle over me. All of this was where I was meant to be. With Coulter, building something remarkable together, professionally and personally. 4 months ago my life had imploded. I'd lost my job, my stability, my sense of direction. But from that destruction had come something better than I could have imagined. A true partnership, equality, love, and a future full of possibility.